Hello from the National Studio, where we are watching political drama unfold again tonight. I'm Adrienne Arsenault.
And I'm Andrew Chang. Tonight, the votes are being counted in a country deeply divided.
We're winning enough states to reach 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency.
Joe Biden thinks he's on the brink of victory.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
But it seems Donald Trump will fight until the end. His unfounded claim of victory and the legal challenges he thinks can get him there.
And their country divided red and blue, watching with the rest of the world, bracing for what comes next. This is a special edition of The National.
Well, the U.S. election has proven yet again truth can be far stranger than fiction. Despite a pandemic, turnout was historic.
But the man who will end up in the White House remains unknown.
American democracy is still playing out and still being tested.
Tonight, The National has full coverage. We have reporters in Washington watching the White House, at Biden headquarters in Delaware, and in states that are critical to winning the presidency, those states still in limbo. We will have the one candidate who at the moment is calling for votes to be counted, the other who currently is calling for votes to be challenged. Tonight, the Trump campaign is suing in 3 states, so the presidency isn't the only institution hanging in the balance. Let us start tonight with the Biden campaign and with Susan Ormiston, who is in Wilmington, Delaware, again tonight, not far from Biden headquarters. Susan.
You know, Joe Biden is closer to the White House after a tumultuous 24 hours where he saw his political fortunes rise, dive, and then rise again, primarily on today's strength in mostly mail-in ballots being counted now in significant states. He says he is feeling more confidently on top. The sun's not going down yet on the Democrats' dreams in a country split and still suspended with no clear winner. Joe Biden says he is poised.
I'm not here to declare that we've won, but I am here to report that when the count is finished, we believe we will be the winners.
Since last night, doing the math, flipping Michigan and Wisconsin into his column, Biden needs wins in at least one other battleground. His team believes it will reach the magic 270. But only if all legitimate ballots are counted. Record numbers of Americans voted, an estimated 65% or higher turnout, but the enthusiasm was on both sides.
Even in the face of a pandemic, more Americans voted this election than ever before in American history. Over 150 million people cast their votes. I think that's just extraordinary.
But ask those voters today digesting the latest political storm. You feel calm today?
As calm as you might feel when a hurricane has just passed over you and you're like looking at devastation and thinking, hey, there's more on the other side of that we still have to go through.
His dad across the table, not bothered by Trump's resistance to the results.
I voted for him. I personally don't like him as a man. He doesn't meet any of my morals, but I also think that I like his policy. So I like his policy, and so I'm fine with that.
As unsettled as many feel, they were expecting this.
You have to expect it. It's his fanfare. So I don't think anybody's going to be surprised if we have a whole reality TV show going on after the end of this election. I think we all should expect it.
So, Susan, is there a chance that Joe Biden will weigh in tonight?
Very unlikely. His campaign is telegraphing to all of us that we won't see or hear from him publicly again tonight. But, Adrienne, potentially tomorrow may be a big day. Joe Biden is being very careful not to raise any false expectations or make false claims, but at the same time to keep expectations up amongst his supporters, keep the enthusiasm going that maybe they will not be disappointed. Also, that he will not let election results be manipulated. So that's where we are tonight.
All right, Susan Ormiston at Biden headquarters. Thanks, Susan.
Okay, let's turn now to the other side of the electoral coin. President Trump starting legal action to stop vote counting in several states. Paul Hunter is in Washington with that part of the story tonight. Paul.
Andrew, Donald Trump's thinking seems to be that the best way to somehow not lose the White House now is to do whatever he can to slow down or flat out block more votes from being counted for Biden. In other words, to go on offense. Even as the ballot counting continued in Michigan today, the stacks of manila envelopes opened one by one. And with all of a sudden the election broadly trending Joe Biden's way, Donald Trump took aim and fired, tweeting, "We have claimed for electoral vote purposes Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, and the state of Michigan." Never mind that multiple news organizations have now called Michigan for Biden and that those other states remain undetermined. Trump today seemed to echo his stunning claim made late last night before supporters at the White House, family watching as those numbers turned away from Trump. Trump claiming the election was his.
Frankly, we did win this election.
Adding he was set for a fight to ensure that.
We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Today, as ballot counting kept up and one by one key states flipped Biden's way, Trump followed through on his threat to push back hard. In Wisconsin, he now wants a recount. In Nevada, he's considering one. He's launching court action in Michigan, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. Supported on all of that today by freshly re-elected Republican ally, Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell.
Going to court is the way we resolve uncertainty in our country. So no, I'm not troubled at all by the president suggesting that.
Inside the White House tonight, Trump advisors are reportedly increasingly pessimistic about outcomes on any of this for the president. It's a numbers game now, and the numbers have flipped for the moment. There's also reporting from the White House tonight that Trump's advisors were caught by surprise with the now extreme tightening of the race in Georgia. They didn't see that coming. And just one other thing to consider, Andrew, next time you see those images of volunteers counting ballots at those tables, consider that that's happening throughout this country right now amid the angst and stress and noise over how any of this might play out. Regular Americans just doing their job in the name of free and fair elections, work that often gets overlooked at times like this and worth noting.
Smart point. Paul Hunter in Washington, thanks for this. Okay, now talking about challenging ballots and overturning results is one thing, actually doing it quite another. So for more on how far this gambit might go, I'm joined by election law expert Nicholas Stephanopoulos. He's a professor at Harvard Law School and joins me tonight from Winchester, Massachusetts. Hello to you. So can I ask you this, just on the face of it, is this a legal challenge that makes sense? So, you know, if we use Michigan as an example, Republicans saying that, you know, we were guaranteed a certain level of access and we didn't get it.
Yeah, it's really too little, too late. It's a Hail Mary. It's too late because it's coming after essentially all of the votes have already been tallied in Michigan. And it's also too little. If you look at the complaint the Trump campaign filed, it's extraordinarily narrow. The allegation is that a particular Republican observer from a particular rural county didn't get the access he was supposed to get. None of this threatens a material number of ballots. So it's really a sort of ticky-tack minor lawsuit, in my view.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Are there versions of either the Michigan lawsuit or other lawsuits, similar ones happening in other states, are there versions of that fight that you see escalating realistically to the U.S. Supreme Court, where, as we know, as anyone who's been following politics for the last several months knows, tilts heavily in the Republicans' favor?
Yeah, I see two obstacles for the Trump campaign to get to the Supreme Court. One is that their recent suits have been filed in state court involving challenges under state law. To get to the U.S. Supreme Court, they have to find a federal legal issue or constitutional issue. And the lawsuits you referred to don't raise federal issues. Second, the Supreme Court doesn't want to get involved in disputes that can't realistically affect the result of the election. So unless one of these states gets really close, and unless there's a plausible legal challenge involving a lot of votes, a dispositive number of votes, I don't think the Supreme Court is going to want to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
That's really good insight. Nicholas Stephanopoulos, professor at Harvard Law School. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So you might be wondering, how does CBC News handle the vote count? That's what you see at the bottom of your screen of the Electoral College. Well, in the United States, there's no central data body like there is with Elections Canada. So the Associated Press contacts every single precinct and then tabulates. CBC accesses AP's data. Each U.S. network also has its own system. So only when 3 networks have a result that aligns with AP's will we call it, because this is about being right. It's not about being fast. And every new decision means that, Ian, the map, the numbers will fill out a little bit more. So today, CBC called both Wisconsin and Michigan for Biden. What can you tell us about, the other states that are in play for him right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was walking around in Toronto today and people were saying to me, what's the latest? How many Electoral College votes does one or the other have? And so, as you mentioned, Wisconsin, Michigan, Maine, Biden's numbers slowly went up and he's leading in 2 states tonight. Nevada, first of all. You see that lead and it looks pretty small, right? And 75% of the votes counted, but we're told of the remaining mail-in votes, many of them are around the city of Las Vegas. They're expected to skew very heavily towards the Democrats, and therefore Nevada looks pretty good for the Democrats. It's one that Hillary Clinton won 4 years ago, but we're not going to get any new results from Nevada tonight. On the other hand, through the evening, the picture in Arizona may become at least clearer, if not final. 86% of the votes counted at this point, and it already has been tightening up a bit. It's possible that the remaining votes here may skew actually towards the Republicans. And I want to go to one more state. Keep in mind, though, by the way, if you take Arizona and Nevada, they have 17 Electoral College votes. Add that to the 253 that Biden has now. That would be the magic 270. But if he doesn't win Arizona, he still has a shot here in Pennsylvania. We'll talk about that later. But really, of the remaining votes in Pennsylvania, they are already skewing very heavily towards Joe Biden.
All right, Ian, thanks very much. We'll check in a little bit later.
So let's zero in on Pennsylvania, shall we? Stephen D'Souza is in Philadelphia, very close to that city's massive vote counting operation. Stephen, can you tell us what's going on where you are?
The vote counting operation that's taking place not far from here has been going continuously since Tuesday morning. They've counted about 66% of the votes, so they still have a little bit ways to go. And while the vote count continues, the tension around it continues to ratchet up.
Talking to our friends, family.
In the shadow of Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence and Constitution were adopted, protesters rallied to protect the sanctity of the election from the president.
He afraid that we gonna win in Pennsylvania. Although he ahead right now, but we know that a lot of people voted here.
It's terrifying to think that he thinks he can get away with it.
Trump gets out now!
Anger on the street simmered.
Because what we know is our democracy is on the line.
And grew throughout the day into the evening. Today, fresh attacks and lawsuits by the Trump campaign. One alleging Republican observers are too far away. Therefore, any votes counted to this point should be thrown out. The courts have already rejected similar complaints, and across Pennsylvania, officials lined up to defend the vote counting process.
Pennsylvania will have a fair election, and that election will be free of outside influences. I will vigorously, and we all will vigorously defend against any attempt to attack that vote in Pennsylvania.
There are some things that we can still do, Muriel.
The concern amongst election observers that the usual hiccups that come with vote counting are being magnified and distorted by the president and his campaign.
Political players in the U.S. have become very good at making this kind of mischaracterization, to take some little meaningless thing and turn it into a big issue.
Today, one of the president's sons and his lawyer came to Philadelphia to question why the state hasn't been called for Trump.
How many votes do we have to be ahead? 400,000 is not enough? Do you think we're stupid? You think we're fools?
The reason it hasn't been called? All those uncounted mail-in votes in Democratic-friendly urban areas, which seem to be slowly moving the state towards Joe Biden. But what everyone wants to know, when will it be decided? Say exasperated officials.
We'll be done as soon as we're done.
Okay, so Stephen, I'm almost afraid to ask, what happens next?
Well, we're going to continue to wait for those results, which at the pace they're going could come possibly within the next 24 hours. But with all of the threats of lawsuits that are out there, Andrew, even having a final result may not end things here.
Stephen D'Souza, thank you very much.
All right, so let's go now to Arizona. That's where Joe Biden currently holds a very narrow lead. Our David Common is at a vote counting center in Phoenix. So, David, it seems there are new numbers there. What's the latest?
Absolutely, Adrian. That narrow lead is getting a little less narrow as of new numbers that have just been released. 80,000 more ballots have been counted. And when I say counted, they're quite literally being counted in behind me here. But there are still, more than 500,000 ballots, provisional ballots, mail-in ballots that still need to be counted. At this point, too early to say exactly who's going to win, but very clearly Joe Biden does continue to have the lead, and this is in a state that could well deliver that path to the presidency with its electoral votes. As the vote continues here, there continues to be a bit of a commotion that was occurring outside, at one point inside here as well, with Trump supporters coming in and alleging that their vote had been discounted, that they were provided Sharpies that bled through the ballot, and their ballot was consequently disqualified. They've now moved off to the Capitol, but there were some tense moments here, certainly, as law enforcement became involved, pushed them outside, and the vote has since continued inside here. Adrian.
All right, so David, we have heard that the Trump campaign also has been questioning these results in Arizona. What's your sense of the chances of a legal challenge officially from the Republicans there?
When you look across the country, Adrian, absolutely, there have been legal challenges, legal threats. The ideology seems to be contest everything, contest and dispute ballots and results. And we're seeing not just supporters, but the campaign doing that here in this key state of Arizona.
All right, David Common, again, as he said, in that key state of Arizona. So another crucial state still in limbo, that would be Georgia, counting going right into the night. And there, too, a lawsuit has been filed by the Trump campaign. This is where Katie Simpson is tonight. So, Katie, nice to see you. You have a front row seat as the ballots are being counted quite close, it seems.
Yeah, let me get it out of the way, Adrian. You can see what's happening here behind me. Earlier in the night, there were about 30,000 more ballots to be processed, absentee ballots, and that will be all of the ballots for most of the ballots for Fulton County. There are still some other ballots that need to be processed that are going to come in the next few days. Military votes, other votes, votes that may be disputed that need a further examination. But the team here, they're not leaving until this is all done, and it will get Georgia inching closer to a result. Remember, there are 16 electoral college votes up for grabs here. Donald Trump was favored to win here. However, it was considered to be extremely close. We saw Joe Biden put a lot of time and resources into this state, and they were hoping for a flip. Donald Trump is narrowly leading here, but a lot of the votes that are going to be counted are from Democrat-leaning areas. So again, it remains tight, and it's going to be tight right up to the wire.
Katie, can you give us one sentence, if that's even possible, on what the possible Trump lawsuit issue is tonight?
Well, Donald Trump and the Republicans here in Georgia say that some absentee ballots were mixed in together where they shouldn't have been, that ballots that came in after 7 p.m. were put in with ballots that arrived on time, and then that's not supposed to happen. If it doesn't arrive here before 7 p.m. on Election Day, it's not supposed to be processed. And so the Republicans are alleging that there were some ballots mixed in together, and they want to make sure a judge is enforcing the law to make sure everything that arrived before 7 p.m. yesterday is processed. Anything after, out the door.
All right, Katie Simpson in Georgia. Thanks, Katie.
Now, these tight races are decidedly not the clear Biden advantage that some pollsters had predicted. There is still more counting to be done, but Thomas Daigle looks at where those polls fell down and why.
There are new numbers.
Tune into American TV news in recent months, and you might be left with the impression that Joe Biden was on course for a landslide.
With a 14-point advantage over Trump.
Leading by 16 points.
In fact, with more ballots counted now, Biden's national lead over Trump in the popular vote was revealed to be only about 2% so far, a discrepancy not lost on Republicans.
Now, I've heard for months from the pollsters and the media about how Republicans were going to lose more seats and cling to shrinking coalitions.
Donald Trump said the pollsters got it completely and historically wrong, but did they really? A respected average of polls gave Biden an 8-point lead in the popular vote, but with more results coming in the days ahead, some polling experts are convinced Biden will only be a few points off.
He's not outside the range of expectations that you would reasonably have drawn if you look closely enough at the polls.
Still, there was a reasonably high expectation that U.S. pollsters had learned lessons after famously overstating Hillary Clinton's odds of winning in 2016.
Hello, Florida. Hello.
Turns out they're still learning how to measure Trump's support.
People will have to step back and say, okay, who exactly was able to get it right? And is there a way of taking into account this problem of the shy Trump voter?
As that shyness theory goes, many Trump supporters won't pledge their support out loud for fear others will judge them. Then there's the risk of underrepresenting non-college educated voters who tend to distrust pollsters. Not to mention, fewer people pick up a pollster's call, leaving response rates as low as 8%.
That could lead to huge bias when we have such low response rate.
With so little data, it's hard to know what to expect, except perhaps less precise polling. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, Prime Minister Trudeau is waiting to weigh in on the results south of the border.
We are, of course, following it carefully and will continue to as the day and days unfold.
Up next, more coverage of America Votes. We're going to look at Ottawa's response to a close U.S. race.
Plus, Alberta's message the day after.
Very distraught, probably without a job. I wouldn't doubt that this pipeline gets shut down immediately if Biden wins.
What a Biden or Trump presidency could mean for Keystone XL.
And later, how Americans in Canada are feeling tonight.
I actually slept on the couch.
Every time I would walk by her, she would just roll her eyes. I'd roll them back to her, but...
Their reactions to this moment. We're back in 2 minutes. Welcome back. You're looking at the skyline of Detroit, a city that played a major role in delivering Michigan to Joe Biden today in a very tight race. Along with Wisconsin, it is part of a so-called blue wall that Democrats lost 4 years ago. Now, Americans weren't alone in watching those key battlegrounds. Audiences around the world have been glued to this presidential election.
Cette élection présidentielle américaine, too close to call.
Too close to call.
The race to the White House couldn't be tighter.
It is pretty chaotic.
Tens of millions tuned in, waiting anxiously for results like many of us closer to the U.S. border. The eventual winner could play such a key role on the world stage, but without a decisive result, world leaders have had very little to say. Now, everyone in Ottawa clearly has an opinion on the twists and turns of the U.S. election, but when you're the Prime Minister or the official opposition, you keep it to yourself. Still, as David Cochrane shows us, some party leaders aren't quite so diplomatic.
With so much still undecided south of the border, the Prime Minister has decided to stay out of it.
There is an electoral process underway in the United States. We are, of course, following it carefully and will continue to as the day and days unfold.
The Conservatives aren't touching it either.
We're continuing to watch. It's interesting. We'll have to see what they do.
Don't expect the leading parties to change their tune until the counting is done. The legal challenges exhausted, a final winner declared.
A lot of Canadians woke up today pretty worried and pretty afraid.
A harsh critic of Donald Trump, Jagmeet Singh says the fact the election is even this close is a problem.
Why, despite all the obvious, glaring problems, massive problems, and abject failure of leadership of President Trump, that people still voted for him?
I think that Mr. Trudeau should do nothing.
The Bloc Québécois leader says it's smart to say nothing of the election itself, but then made pointed comments about Trump and his supporters.
A man who openly lies, avoids paying his taxes, carries and shares prejudice against so many people. Why do the American people still support so strongly that man?
Trudeau's caution in all of this is understandable because no matter who ultimately wins this election, Trump is still president until at least January. So Trudeau has to manage that relationship for at least 3 more months and possibly 4 more years. David Cochrane, CBC News, Ottawa.
In Alberta's oil patch, people are speaking out. Many there openly prefer Donald Trump for his support of the Keystone XL pipeline project. As Carolyn Dunn tells us, they see a Biden presidency as a threat to their own economic recovery.
These days, there's plenty of prep work for the owners of the cafe on Main Street. The locals sit right here on Coffee Row and jaw about the U.S. election.
Everybody's hoping the pipeline will continue. I mean, it's been just great for our community here. So we're all, a lot of us, cheering for Trump.
The Keystone XL pipeline is under construction right outside of town, kick-started by a presidential permit issued by Donald Trump and the support of the Alberta government. This project is seen as so critical to the province of Alberta, it's invested $1.5 billion in it, along with billions more in loan guarantees. But Biden has promised to pull those Keystone XL permits. So many of the hundreds who are making a living building it are filled with anxiety.
Very distraught, very concerned, very worried, probably without a job.
Chances of politicians sticking to what they promise. Things could change, hopefully, for the better.
A lot of people in this little boom town will be counting on just that, including its mayor, who believes a President Biden may slow but not stop the pipeline.
Lots of people are hoping for, President Trump to win, because then they don't see where it would slow down at all, okay? But it's still going to happen.
Many industry analysts agree it might be difficult for Biden to just pull the permits. Still, there's a feeling of unease.
You have to wait and see what happens, in a week or two after whoever gets in.
Uncertainty that may linger even after the election is finalized. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Oyen, Alberta.
Coming up next, our panel of U.S. political insiders try to make sense of the results and the road ahead.
And a little later, from confusion to anxiety.
I think that's not what U.S. needs as a representative. They can do better. You can do better, guys. Come on.
We ask Canadians what they're thinking 24 hours later.
Welcome back. 4 weeks going into this election, there were uncertainties and anxieties. There are now realities. For one, polls missed major pockets of Trump voters again, turning what looked like a long shot into a real shot at a 2016-style upset. And for another, the blue shift, that record wave of mail-in votes vilified by Trump, has so far tiled the map, it seems, to Joe Biden. They are still being counted, and they're still being challenged. So as we wait for clarity, let's turn now to two people who know the White House very well. Krish Omarra-Vignarajah, a former Obama administration official. David Frum, George W. Bush's former speechwriter and senior editor of The Atlantic. David, nice to see you again. So let's start with you. What has changed for you over the last 24 hours in terms of how you're seeing this moment?
Well, as we know more, we can see, first, it was a massive Democratic event. I mean, just absolutely stunning turnout, stunning votes cast. Joe Biden will clear, it looks like, at least 70 million votes, maybe more. The walls are closing in on Donald Trump's plan to hold on to the presidency despite losing the popular vote. Every hour, it seems, that things get more difficult for him. But we're also moving into a realization this is very much a personal defeat for the president, that the Democrats did not do well down the ticket. They did not do well in the Senate. They did not do well in the House. They did not do well in the states. And so there's going to be a very divided balance. In the immediate term, that means, and this is something probably of direct concern to Canadians economically, is that there is going to be not the big fiscal stimulus in January that I think a lot of economists, a lot of Canadian households might have been hoping for, an ignition of economic activity. And down the road, it's going to be harder for the United States to do something about its deficits and bring its books into order and thus prevent the risk of inflation in years 3 and 4 of a Biden presidency.
All right, Dave, thank you. Krish, you have spoken before about how you believe the Trump presidency has sort of been, I guess, a stress test for American democracy. So what's your sense of how that democracy is so far holding up?
Yeah, it sometimes feels like you look back at the last 4 years and it's like a home inspection test where someone's come in and tested everything to the extreme. I think there is some healing that is longer term, and it's tough for me to assess that at this point. But I do think when you look at, as David mentioned, the numbers, the fact that we are on track to record 160 million votes, 24 million more than the previous election. The fact that 66% of eligible voters submitted ballots, the highest percentage since 1900, it reflects that people were awakened in these last 4 years, that no one was complacent, that no one was sitting on the sidelines. I'm also heartened by the fact that you did see a lot of people who were mobilized, and while there were fears of civil unrest, violence, political violence, there really haven't been any real incidents. People are they're glued to their screens watching the election results come in, but they want to make sure that every eligible vote is counted.
It does look like Trump's only option at this point is, well, to wait it out and hope the math turns out in his favor, or keep contesting ballots coming in. David, where does the litigation strategy take him and the Republican Party?
Well, in a funny way, he's got a problem because his party did so well. Had the Republicans lost everything, had this been a debacle, it would have united Trump and the Republicans in the shared interest to fight everything. But I think you see this happening with governors like Mike DeWine in Ohio, with senators, that they're saying, you know what, we all did okay. We are holding our power. We are going to control the Senate probably. We've got these huge majorities in the Supreme Court. And you always bugged us. So, Don, welcome to your future all by yourself. And there you can see a kind of separation that is happening where they are not standing up and joining him in his fight.
So while that happens, while that is their political ambition on the line there, what about the impacts, Chris, of the litigation strategy for Americans? I mean, regardless of whether the lawsuits hold up in court, what does the process do to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to contextualize the litigation strategy because in the last 24 hours, it's been a moving target. Last night, President Trump was very clear in terms of his strategy, which is let's shut down counting in the states that he was ahead and allow for counting in those that he wasn't. Today, it was family members, sharing suggestions that were completely false in terms of, ballots being burned. And now, of course, it's the litigation in the 3 states. I think what's really alarming is that the president telegraphed even before the election his strategy when it came to litigation, which was to bring it to courts in the hopes that it would go to the Supreme Court, which, of course, he did appoint 2 justices to. And I think the bigger implication is, what does it mean if the Supreme Court actually does get involved? I don't really see it getting to them, but I do think that's the implication of does that institution become of concern because people feel like it intervened unnecessarily or that his justices weighed in his favor.
All right, Krishamara Vignaraja, David Frum, thank you again for your insights. So both candidates, once again, they do have a path to victory, that all-important 270 Electoral College votes. So let's go back to Ian. With more votes coming in, what states remain in play for Donald Trump?
There are 6 states that remain in play, period, and Donald Trump has to win at least 5 of them to win the White House. Let's begin with Alaska. That has gone Republican in every single presidential election since it joined the Union but one. So we'll give him Alaska. Pennsylvania, a lot more electoral votes than Alaska. Alaska has 3. You can see Pennsylvania has 20, but a much tougher road for Donald Trump. Yes, he's leading here, but it's already tightened up this evening, and we expect it to tighten up even further. Donald Trump's son has declared victory for his dad here. Joe Biden says the absentee ballots are breaking his way in a huge way, almost, well, I think more than 75%. So we'll see. But let's just assume for a moment that Donald Trump wins Pennsylvania. The 2 other states he's leading in tonight. And if you put those together, Georgia and North Carolina, along with Alaska and Pennsylvania, you end up with 54 Electoral College votes. Add that to the number at the bottom of the screen, and you come up with 268. What does that mean? Well, it means that's not enough. And it means he has to win probably Arizona as well. I mean, maybe Nevada, but that's looking pretty good for the Democrats. So really, for the Republicans, all hopes now on all the states where he's leading, and add Arizona to that. We're getting more results in Arizona. Joe Biden remains in the lead there. But you know what? That state is tightening up as well. So there's a path. It's uphill, it's narrow, but there is still a path for President Trump.
All right, Ian, thank you very much. Let us take another look at the White House tonight. We still do not know who will occupy it for the next 4 years. We will have more special coverage coming up. But first, Andrew, there is other news just ahead.
Indeed. After the break, we will have the latest on the pandemic in Canada, including what kind of mask the country's top doctors recommending you use this winter. That's next. Well, in Canada, the second wave of the pandemic continues to exact a heavy toll in several provinces, with Manitoba hospitals trying to avoid being overwhelmed. After several days of declining new cases there, a spike of 374 today. Still down from Friday's high, but more critically, 72 of 80 ICU beds are in use, and nearly a third of those are COVID patients. Quebec reported more than 1,000 cases today, and in Ontario, 987 new cases and 16 deaths, Ontario's deadliest day in this second wave so far. Now, the Ontario government is under fire for its new pandemic plan. It's a system of color-coded levels triggered by certain COVID thresholds, but some doctors are warning it gives the virus way too much room to maneuver. Lauren Pelly has a reaction tonight.
It's about early intervention to avoid getting to the red zone.
That's the goal of Ontario's new pandemic framework. The color-coded system ranges from green, with prevention efforts like gathering limits, to that red level with the tightest controls and restrictions, all the way to a full lockdown, meaning widespread business closures. The plan allows indoor businesses to reopen in several hot zones, like this restaurant in Richmond Hill near Toronto. While owner Jay Setti is glad to bring customers back inside after sluggish sales.
I won't hide there's a bit of anxiety.
Setti worries what could happen if the public doesn't adhere to guidelines like social distancing.
We do have a fear that it's going to be shot.
But the province's plan deems closures a last resort.
You see smoke, you go in there and you put the fire out, compared to waiting until there's a big inferno.
Others warn that fire is already burning. With high case counts in many Ontario communities, some say the threshold to trigger red level restrictions, that final step before a lockdown, is too high. The criteria includes increasing community transmission and large outbreaks, a healthcare system at risk of being overwhelmed, or at least 10% of tests coming back positive. Even in Toronto, which has the bulk of Ontario's recent cases, the average number of tests coming back positive remains under 5%, less than half that 10% threshold.
It's really unlikely we'll get that high. I mean, Manitoba is scratching at 10%, and they're in crisis mode.
This epidemiologist warns the province's plan isn't proactive enough.
They seem to be more attuned to the needs of the businesses to stay open than they are attuned to the needs of the health response.
But provincial officials say you can't ignore the economy. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's top public health doctor has advised Canadians to seek out 3-layer masks because they are likely to stop more of the virus. Magda Gabraselassis shows us it is a recommendation that other health authorities made months ago.
Keeping her side business running was all about changing gears for Renee Welch. When the pandemic hit, she went from making satin-lined knitted hats to multi-layered masks.
I had a bunch of scrap fabric at home, so I decided just to make some masks to donate to hospitals.
Her business has blossomed since then. She now makes masks with 3 layers after doing her research.
I wasn't going to sell something that I knew wasn't going to be safe.
Fabric masks should ideally have 3 layers.
The World Health Organization has been recommending this multi-layered approach for months now. Yet Canada's top doctor only made that call yesterday. The government says it does its own analysis on what's right for Canadians. And now that's adding a 3rd layer if possible.
One of the kind of filter material is non-woven polypropylene, which is like an interface. I don't know if people who sew, I don't, but now I've learned about interfacing. That kind of material can be inserted.
This doctor has researched the effectiveness of cloth masks. She says getting this material from retailers can prove to be tricky.
And we have to be careful when we're buying polypropylene because some polypropylene that's sold for stiffening will actually already be pre-glued to make it easy to use. But that glue is not part of the filtration process, and it's not part of what is intended here.
Intentions aside, this infection control epidemiologist says the new recommendation is adding to the confusion.
The important question in Canada is, can you please put on a mask, as opposed to how is that mask constructed?
So this one is
Construction continues for Welch, who was surprised to hear that the government is only now recommending what she's been doing for months. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Toronto.
Up next, we return to our coverage of the U.S. election, but this time we ask Canadians what they are thinking about the close results next door and the political uncertainty. Here is a look at a vote counting center in Pennsylvania. The state has remained too close to call tonight. 20 electoral votes are at stake there. So, of course, what the U.S. voters decide will have direct consequences for this country. Joanna Remiliotis heard from Canadians on how closely they have been watching and how they're all feeling.
As the vote count continues and the Trump campaign to stop it does too, some say that's just another sign this president has to go.
You guys already had 4 years of this guy, and you've seen what he's done. It's just a lot of lies.
Near the U.S. consulate in Toronto, others also question why the race is still so close.
Numbers look the same. I was hoping it was going to be definitive. I was hoping it was going to be kind of a rebuke of all of his policies and sort of his way of proceeding in his leadership.
Many Canadians stayed up to watch, only to wake up feeling more confused.
That's not what U.S. needs as a representative. They can do better.
If Trump comes in, my friends from U.S. are moving to Canada.
From the city to the suburbs, disappointment and disbelief.
The embarrassment that Trump's been the last 4 years, you think people in America could wake up and realize, how terrible he is as a president.
Riley Nielsen and Josh Gray came together to watch. Nielsen is a dual citizen and a dedicated Democrat.
It's either going to end in massive sense of relief or I'm going to lay down and never get up.
But there is some support for a Trump win among conservatives in the West who fear Joe Biden will halt projects like the Keystone XL pipeline from moving ahead.
Given his rhetoric and what he said about the energy industry, he is going to completely stifle that energy industry that Canada relies upon.
But with Republicans already challenging the outcome, the uncertainty continues.
I think Trump has made the election in general a bit of a reality TV show in its fear way. So I'm not surprised, there's always drama.
But until the final tally, the drama, however tired, promises to keep hanging on. Joanna Remiliotis, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, next, how Americans living in this country are doing, especially when their own house is so divided.
We practiced a whole lot of social distancing yesterday.
Their reflections on this moment in Our Moment. Well, lots of folks on this side of the border were up late watching the election, including this married couple in southern Ontario, Jimmy and Kelly Nixon, two Americans with contrasting political views. Jimmy is a diehard Republican and Trump supporter from Tennessee. Kelly is a diehard Democrat with dual citizenship. How they got through election night is Our Moment.
That's Donald. It's the lead role.
He's not happy unless he's dividing.
We practiced a whole lot of social distancing yesterday.
He was gloating. That's
for
what
a while.
He gloated from 10 o'clock last night till 2 o'clock in the morning. And then he started getting a little bit nervous. And then he went to bed at 3. I was up till 5. I actually slept on the couch because I stayed up to watch the election. And he caved at about 2 in the morning, so.
Every time I would walk by her, she would just roll her eyes. I'd roll them back to her, but.
As he would say, you're hanging what?
I'm hanging in there like a hair in a biscuit. We can put a man on the moon, but for some reason we can't count votes. I don't understand it.
I really like these two,
Oh, yeah.
Kelly and Jimmy.
Yeah.
Can we come over? Because I think firstly I'd really like to bottle his laugh. But Kelly has said that, or Jimmy says that Kelly says that she will knock it off with the politics if Joe Biden wins.
Well, it's a good reminder, right? I mean, no matter how divided folks can sometimes feel, I think, you know, many of us aren't coming from a bad place. Lots of honest intentions out there.
A lot of love.
There you go. That's the National for this November 4th. Have a good night.
Good night.